I'm going to say something that might make some people uncomfortable. And I want to say it clearly, without softening it, because I think too many people my age are not hearing it said plainly enough. A nursing home will not save your life. In most cases, it will end the part of your life that was worth living. I know that's a strong statement. I know there are situations, genuine cognitive decline, physical dependency, medical complexity, where a care facility is the right and necessary answer. I am not talking about those situations. I am talking about the millions of older Americans who are healthy, or mostly healthy, who are capable, or mostly capable, who could live full and independent and genuinely good lives, and who instead get quietly, lovingly, efficiently moved into a managed environment where the days are scheduled and the meals are served and nothing is ever required of them again. And they go in as people, and they come out, 2 years later, as patients. I watched it happen to my friend Dorothy. I watched it happen to my sister-in-law June. I watched 2 women I loved and respected become smaller, slower, less themselves, within 18 months of moving into places that were clean and safe and staffed by people who meant well, and that were, in every measurable sense, the death of the people they used to be. I turned 72, and I made myself a promise. Whatever happens, wherever this goes, I will not go quietly into a managed life. I will not trade my autonomy for safety before the math actually requires it. And if the only way to keep that promise was to leave the country I had lived in my entire life, then that was what I was going to do. My name is Margaret. I am 74 years old. I live in Dumaguete City in the Philippines, and I want to tell you everything, the real story, the honest numbers, the hard parts, and the thing that I believe with my whole heart, which is that for the right person, this is not just an alternative to a nursing home. It is a better life than most Americans have access to at any price. Let me tell you who I was before I came here, because context is everything. I spent 31 years as a social worker in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Child Protective Services for the first decade, then Elder Care Coordination for the last 21, which means I spent 2 decades helping families navigate exactly the kind of decisions I am talking about right now. I sat across from adult children who loved their parents and were exhausted and frightened. I helped place people in facilities. I visited them afterward. I watched what happened. I am not speaking from ignorance about what nursing homes are and what they do and what they cost. I am speaking from 31 years of professional proximity to the system and a very clear picture of what it produces. My husband Robert died in 2019. We had been married for 40 years, and he had been, in every sense that mattered, the person I organized my life around. After he died, I kept working for 2 more years, because work was structure, and structure was survival, and I was not yet ready to face the question of what came after. I retired in 2021, at 70, and the question was waiting for me exactly where I'd left it. I had my health, which I was grateful for. I had a pension and Social Security that together came to $1,890 a month, which in Minneapolis is a number that allows you to exist without comfort. I had a 1-bedroom apartment near Robert's old office that I'd moved into after selling the house, that I'd chosen for its location and regretted for its isolation. I had an adult daughter, Claire, in Seattle, who called twice a week and visited twice a year, and worried about me with the particular quality of worry that comes from distance and love in combination. And I had, somewhere around the end of my first winter alone, a growing understanding that the life I was living was not a life I was choosing. It was a life I had settled into because settling was easier than deciding. I had helped enough people through enough transitions to know what that particular drift looked like and what it usually led to. So I decided before someone else decided for me. I want to tell you how I found the Philippines, because it didn't come from a travel magazine or a YouTube algorithm. It came from a woman I'd placed in a facility 8 years earlier named Vera, who had been sharp and independent and furious about going, and who had, 2 years after I'd retired, sent me a letter. An actual letter, written in her careful handwriting on pale blue paper, from an address in the Philippines. She was 79. She had lasted 14 months in the facility before her daughter, to her credit, had reconsidered the whole arrangement. Vera had done her own research, found a community of older American women in Dumaguete, and moved there with 2 suitcases and the determination of a woman who had been proven right and intended to make the most of it. The letter was 4 pages long. It described her morning walks to the market, her apartment with the balcony, her neighbors, the cost of living, which she laid out with the precision of a woman who'd spent a career as an accountant and wanted to make sure I understood the numbers weren't a fantasy. Her doctor, who was excellent and cost almost nothing. The food, about which she wrote with a convert's enthusiasm. And at the bottom of the last page, in underlined letters, Margaret, don't wait as long as I did. Come. I put the letter in a drawer and thought about it for 3 months. Then I got it out and read it again. Then I called Claire and told her I was going to the Philippines. Claire's reaction deserves its own paragraph, because I think many of you have already had a version of this conversation with your own children, and you deserve to know you are not alone in having it. She went through the stages in quick succession. Concern, which was genuine. Practical objections, which were also genuine. A suggestion, floated carefully, that perhaps this was grief talking, and maybe I should speak to someone before making major decisions. A counter-suggestion, floated less carefully, that there were some very nice communities near her in Seattle that I might want to tour. And finally, when none of that moved me, a long silence, and then, Mom, are you actually serious? I told her I had spent 21 years making this kind of recommendation to other people's families, and I understood the system better than almost anyone she knew, and I was not going into it one day before I had to. I told her I was 72, not 92. I told her I was going to the Philippines for 3 months, and then we'd talk. She made me promise to call every week without fail. I promised. I have kept it. I flew to Cebu in the spring. I took the bus to Dumaguete. I met Vera at the guest house she had recommended, and she was, at 79, more alive than she had been in the photographs her daughter had sent me from the facility 2 years earlier. She was tan. She was unhurried. She had opinions about the best mango vendor in the Palenque, and she delivered them with the authority of someone who had done the research. I spent my first week following her around like a new student, which is what I was. She showed me the market, the boulevard, the good clinic, the bad intersection to avoid, the carinderia where the lunch was extraordinary, and the one where it was ordinary, but the owner was so warm that you went back anyway. She introduced me to her neighbors and her doctor and the woman at the pharmacy who knew her medications by heart. And she showed me her apartment. Small, clean, tiled floors, a ceiling fan, a balcony with a view over a neighboring garden to a strip of sea in the distance. She paid 13,500 pesos a month. At the time, that was $240. I looked at that apartment, and I thought about the facility I had placed her in 8 years earlier. The single room with the adjustable bed and the call button on a cord, and the scheduled meal times, and the activities calendar on the wall. The safety, the absolute managed, airless safety of it. And I thought about the number Vera had been paying there. $4,200 a month. I went home to Minneapolis, gave notice on my apartment, sold what I didn't need, shipped what I did, and moved to Dumaguete 4 months later. I have been here 2 years. Let me tell you what those 2 years have looked like, practically and honestly, because that's what you came here for. My apartment is 1 bedroom on the 3rd floor of a small building in a quiet neighborhood called Camanjac, about 15 minutes on foot from the boulevard. Tiled floors, a ceiling fan in every room, a wall unit in the bedroom I run at night, a balcony where I have a chair and a small table, and a view of the street below and the hills in the distance, and, on clear days, a sliver of sea. I pay 14,000 pesos a month. Right now, at current exchange rates, that is approximately $248. I want you to hold that number alongside this one. The average cost of a private nursing home room in the United States is $9,034 a month. The average assisted living facility is $4,500. The number I am paying for a real apartment in a real city where I live a real life is $248. I am not suggesting the two things are directly comparable. A nursing home provides medical oversight and personal care that an apartment does not. I am suggesting that for a person who does not yet need that level of care, and the majority of people who end up in those facilities do not need that level of care when they first arrive. The comparison is worth making carefully and honestly. Because one of those numbers allows you to exist, the other allows you to live. My utilities, electricity, water, internet, run about $90 a month combined. I have a woman named Cora who comes 4 times a week. She is 58 years old, has 7 grandchildren whose photographs cover an entire wall of her own home, and has been working in this building for 6 years. She cleans, does my laundry, manages the kitchen supplies, and has appointed herself the unofficial monitor of whether I am eating properly, which I find alternately touching and mildly intrusive, and which I would not trade for anything. She costs $60 a month. She has refused every raise I have attempted to give her by simply not acknowledging that I have offered one, which is a negotiating strategy I respect enormously. Food. I shop at the Palenque 3 mornings a week. Fresh fish, and the fish here is fresh in a way that the word fresh does not adequately describe. Caught that morning, still cold from the ocean, costs about $1.10 a kilo. Vegetables are almost nothing. A week of produce for one person runs me $12 to $15. I cook most of my own meals because I enjoy cooking, and because the ingredients are extraordinary, and because having something to do with your hands and your attention in the morning is, I have come to believe, one of the underrated necessities of a good life. I eat out 2 or 3 evenings a week at a small place near the boulevard where the cook, a woman named Inde, has been making the same adobo for 22 years and has reached a level of mastery with it that I find humbling and inspiring in equal measure. A full meal costs $2. My medications, a blood pressure pill and a cholesterol medication, cost $24 a month at the pharmacy 3 blocks from my apartment. In Minneapolis, with Medicare Part D, the same medications cost me $89. I have confirmed with my doctor here, who is thorough and board certified and trained in Singapore, that they are identical medications at identical dosages. I see Dr. Reyes every 3 months for a routine follow-up. Each visit costs $15. She calls me by my first name, spends 40 minutes with me, and has twice caught things in routine blood work that warranted attention before they became problems. In Minneapolis, my doctor was excellent, and I waited 3 weeks for an appointment and was in and out in 12 minutes. All of it: rent, utilities, food, Cora, medical care, medications, transportation, the occasional San Miguel on a warm evening, which I consider a necessary operating expense, comes to between $590 and $650 a month. My income is $1,890. I am saving over $1,200 every single month on a social worker's retirement income. I am not cutting corners. I am not sacrificing. I am eating better, moving more, sleeping longer, and spending more time in the company of people who are genuinely glad to see me than I did in any year of my life in Minneapolis. I want to tell you what the days are actually like, because the numbers are important, but the days are the whole point. I wake up at 5:30 most mornings, not from an alarm, from the street, which starts early and does not require your permission. The tricycles, the first vendors, the roosters, who I have made my peace with in the way that you make peace with something you cannot change, and that has stopped bothering you once you stop treating it as an offense. I make coffee, real Baracco coffee, grown on the mountain behind the city, dark and thick, and nothing like the pale brown water I drank in Minneapolis for 30 years calling it coffee. And I take it to the balcony. I sit for 20 minutes. I do not check my phone. I do not plan the day. I watch the street and drink my coffee and let the morning be a morning rather than a managed transition to the next obligation. Then the market if I need it, or a walk along the boulevard if I don't. The boulevard at 6:30 in the morning is one of the better things on this earth. The fishermen coming in on the far side of the water, the old men beginning their chess games at the seawall tables, the air still cool enough that you can move through it without negotiating. I know the chessmen by name now. They know mine. We nod to each other in the way of people who have established a reliable daily rhythm and find it good. 3 mornings a week, I volunteer at a community reading program near the university, which Vera started 4 years ago, and which now has 12 regular volunteers and 43 children who come to practice their English reading. I sit with a child, and I listen to them read, and I help with the hard words, and I tell them they're doing well, which they always are in the way that matters. A child reading her 3rd chapter book to an adult who is paying full attention to her is doing well. That is not encouragement. That is simply true. There is a girl named Sunshine who is 8 years old and who has, without ceremony or negotiation, claimed me as her personal reading grandmother. She arrives on Monday and Wednesday mornings, puts her book on the table, and says, in the Cebuano English mix, that is her natural register, "Lola Margaret, I have been practicing," and she has, every single time she has been practicing. And I listen, and I help, and I feel, 3 mornings a week, that I am doing something that matters. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, the entire point. The afternoons I slow down because the heat requires it, and I have learned to obey rather than resist. I read. I write letters, actual letters, on paper, which my grandchildren find hilarious and secretly treasure. I call Claire on Thursdays, and we talk for an hour, and she has stopped asking when I'm coming home because she knows the answer and has, I think, begun to understand why. Evenings belong to the boulevard. I walk it most days. I have a bench I favor near the large acacia trees toward the northern end, and I sit there in the cooling air and watch the city do its evening thing. The families, the vendors, the children, the couples, the old men who have moved their chess games from the seawall to the tables along the path. I have been on that bench in heat and in rain and in the particular golden light that happens here in the last 20 minutes before full dark, when everything goes amber and the sea turns a color that doesn't have a name yet, and I have not once sat there and wished I was somewhere else. Now I want to talk about the things people my age worry about, because I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't address them plainly. The first is medical care, and I want to be direct. I am a trained social worker who spent 21 years in elder care, not a physician, but I have been through the Philippine healthcare system as a patient now, and I have formed real opinions. Routine care is excellent, affordable, and delivered with a warmth and thoroughness that the American system largely abandoned when it started billing by the minute. Dr. Reyes is better than my doctor in Minneapolis, not because Minneapolis lacks good doctors, but because she has time. She has time to sit with me, to ask questions, to listen to the answers, to think carefully. That time is not billable in the American sense. It is simply what a consultation is here. For serious emergencies, cardiac events, strokes, major surgery, you need a plan. Mine involves the best private hospital in Dumaguete for immediate stabilization, Cebu City for anything requiring specialist care, Manila for anything requiring the highest level. I have medical evacuation insurance. I have this written down, and I have shared it with Claire and with Cora and with Dr. Reyes. I am not pretending the risk doesn't exist. I am managing it like an adult. The second thing people worry about is loneliness. I want to address this with precision because it is real, and it is not what people expect. The loneliness is real. Missing Claire, missing my grandchildren, missing Robert every day in the constant low-frequency way that doesn't change with location. All of that is real. But I was lonely in Minneapolis too, in a way that was quieter and more permanent, and had no explanation attached to it. The loneliness here is the loneliness of a person who loves people far away. The loneliness in Minneapolis was the loneliness of a person who had become invisible in her own city. Those are not the same thing. The second one is the one that leads to the facility. The third thing is the practical bureaucracy, and I will be honest, it is a genuine headache. Visa extensions, paperwork, the Bureau of Immigration, the SRRV application process if you go that route, all of it requires patience, and I recommend hiring a local visa agent to handle the complexity. It is worth every peso. Last month, Claire came to visit. She had been saying she would for 2 years, and I had been patient about the gap between saying and doing, because I know my daughter and I know that she needed to wait until she was ready to see what she was going to see. She came prepared, I think, to find something reassuring, but small. A pleasant enough life. A manageable enough situation. Something she could feel okay about from Seattle. Instead, she found Vera, who at 81 is sharper and more present than she was at 73 in the facility. She found Sunshine, who ran up to me in the market on Claire's second morning and wrapped her arms around my waist and said, loud enough for the whole fish section to hear, "Lola Margaret, I read 4 chapters last night." She found Cora, who had made Claire's bed with flowers on the pillow because a guest was coming, and that was what you did. She found my boulevard bench and my chessmen and Inde's adobo and the light going amber and gold over the sea. On her last evening, we sat on the balcony together, and she said something I will keep for the rest of my life. She said, "Mom, when we were talking about facilities after Dad died, I kept saying it was about keeping you safe, and I think what I meant was keeping you contained. Somewhere I could picture you. Somewhere I knew where you were, and I think that was about me, not you." I told her I knew that. I told her I didn't hold it against her. She said, "You're more yourself here than you've been since Dad died. Maybe more than you've been in years." I told her I thought that was true. She looked at the sea for a while. Then she said, "I'm coming back in December, and I'm bringing the kids." I am 74 years old. I am a retired social worker who spent 21 years watching what happens to people when they stop being asked to participate in their own lives. I moved to the Philippines 2 years ago on a social worker's retirement income, and I want to tell you, clearly and without embellishment, what I found. I found a life, a full, daily, demanding, rewarding, warm, sometimes frustrating, always genuine life. I found a child who practices her reading because she knows I'm coming on Monday. I found a woman who monitors my eating without being asked and refuses my raises with complete dignity. I found a doctor who has time. I found a boulevard and a bench and a light that goes amber before dark. I found, at 74, exactly what I was afraid I was going to lose. The nursing home is clean, the staff are kind, the food is nutritious, and the schedule is posted every week on the wall by the dining room. It will cost you $4,500 a month, and it will cost you something that doesn't have a price. I am paying $248 a month for a life that surprises me every morning. Whatever you do, whatever circumstances are pressing you, whatever fear is in the room, whatever loving and frightened children are sitting across from you with a brochure, please hear this from someone who knows both sides of the equation. You are not finished. You are not done being a person who participates. You are not yet someone who needs to be managed. Go somewhere that knows that. Go somewhere that will still be asking things of you at 74 and 84 and every year that follows. The Philippines asked things of me from the first morning, and every morning since, I have been glad it did.